It's time for round 20 of the AFL season. It's as close as we get to a rivalry round this weekend. So sit back, we're going to preview all 9 matches. Hope you enjoy. Welcome on into the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. It's episode 51 coming your way today of season 2025. Round 20 is upon us this weekend. It's basically rivalry round in the AFL. As close as we're going to get to a rivalry round these days. And all 9 matches, I mean, they don't all have something to play for, but most of them do. It's an entertaining weekend of football. Some big games, especially Saturday. So, yeah, we're going to go through all of them today, do a match preview, as we do every single Thursday episode of the podcast. Don't forget, we do 2 podcast episodes every single week. The other one comes out every Monday morning, which is a review of the weekend just been, all 9 matches reviewed, all the best players, all the stats, everything you need to know from the world of football. Your one-stop shop here at All Aussie Rules. We also do plenty of social media content, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Blue Sky. You name it, we got it. All Aussie Rules everywhere. Let's jump into the football. Let's jump into this weekend's action because there's 9 games to get through. And let's start off with Thursday night football. It's Hawthorn Carlton. It's at the MCG. Second time these 2 teams have met this year. Obviously, last time was round 2. Both teams had high hopes at that point of the season. That's not how it's panned out, I guess. 5th on the ladder, though, for Hawthorn. They're flying. 12th on the ladder, Carlton, not so much. Hawthorn obviously will be going into this quite heavy favourites. No surprise there, really. The history of this matchup is 6-4 for Hawthorn's favour over the last 10 meetings. The only time they met last year was round 22. Hawthorn won that one quite convincingly by about 60-odd points. They also met in round 2 this year, as we mentioned earlier. Hawthorn won that one by 20 points. It was a wet, it was a dreary day, but Carlton actually played some okay football, but Hawthorn were just too good. The 3 meetings before that were all Carlton, which is not that surprising because obviously Carlton were up towards the top end of the ladder, 22, 23 sort of thing. Certainly a lot higher than Hawthorn were across those couple years. So the history of the matchup isn't that surprising. Basically, whoever's the better team at the time wins the game. And I mean, that's probably how this one's going to shape out. You look at it offensively, Hawthorn should be able to control this one. The Carlton offense has been quite poor across the season. Slightly better last week, but I mean, opposition dependent, I guess. It was only against Melbourne last weekend. This one's going to be a lot harder. Hawthorn's defense is really quite strong across the year. And I think Carlton will find it difficult to score above that 60 or 65 point mark, I reckon, for the game. Whereas Hawthorn could well easily go into the hundreds. I wouldn't be surprised. You look at Carlton, the last 2 times they've played Hawthorn, they've scored 38 and 60. So it's not going to be an easy game for Carlton. Obviously, it is Doherty's final game. He has announced his retirement this week. So maybe the Blue Baggers get up for him. Even if they were to play out of their skin, they could still fall short in this match. They will need a really good performance in order to beat Hawthorn at the MCG on Thursday night. The area of this game, I guess, where we're looking at the differences between the 2 teams. Hawthorn control the ground pretty well. They're not too bad in clearances. Obviously, Carlton are probably up there as one of the best clearance and contested football teams. Whereas Hawthorn pretty good in contest, not so good at clearances, but they're really good in the turnover game. They're really good at making use of their opportunities. Their tackle pressure is pretty good, solid most of the time. They convert their opportunities into goals, and they transition that ball really, really well. It all sums up as Hawthorn just looked the better team on paper, certainly from what we've seen so far this year. Other than that, what the form guide tells us, also Hawthorn in front on this one. 12-6 for the season. They're 4-1 across their last 5. Their only loss 2 weeks ago against Fremantle in WA over at Optus Stadium. 13-point loss that day when leading at three-quarter time was a really solid performance by Hawthorn. Fremantle were in some really good form, so that's not a bad result, that one. In the last 5 weeks, maybe they haven't beaten much. They beat Adelaide 5-6 weeks ago. Since then, it's been North Melbourne, St Kilda and Port Adelaide have been their last 3 wins. But they're getting the job done, and you'd have to think that should be too good for Carlton, who, on the other side of the fence, are 7-11 for the season. 1-4 across the last 5 weeks. Losses to bottom teams in Port Adelaide, North Melbourne. Couple top teams in Brisbane and Collingwood. And chuck in last week, they finally broke that streak of losses with a win over Melbourne by 8 points. It wasn't convincing, but they got the job done. So that's basically where this matchup is at the moment. It's not probably the most appetising Thursday night game of football. It certainly could have been if Carlton had have done a bit more over the last 5 weeks. You think about it, when they went up against North Melbourne, they had a chance to keep their season alive with some wins. If they had have beaten North Melbourne and Port Adelaide in those 2 weeks, they'd be 9-11 right now, and you never know. But instead, they're sitting 7-11, and season's over. They're just limping their way to the end, and yeah, we'll see what happens with all the mass changes that could potentially happen at Carlton at the end of this season. But for now, on paper, it looks definitely like a Hawthorn win here, I think. We'll jump into game number 2, which is Friday night football. We've got 2 Friday night football matches this weekend. The first one is at Marvel Stadium, and it's probably the least exciting of the 2. It's Essendon Bulldogs, Marvel Stadium. Friday night football. These 2 teams have met already this year, and it was not an exciting game. Don't expect it to be again, in all honesty. Bulldogs, massive, heavy favourites here. No surprise there. They have lost their last 2 games, but they're still won 3 of their last 5. Their last 2 losses, Adelaide by 11 points, which was a disappointing one down in Melbourne. 10-point loss to Brisbane up at the Gabba. Not a bad result. I mean, Brisbane is still one of the hot fancies for the season, so playing them up at the Gabba is never easy, so not a terrible result. Before that, they'd beaten North Melbourne, Sydney and Richmond, so not much in those 3 games. 10-8 for the season. They're 9th on the ladder. They need to win games. They can't lose too many more. In all honesty, this is probably not one that they would lose. On paper, it should be an absolute walk in the park for them. Football's never that easy, but you'd have to think that they should be too strong here. Essendon, they're 6-11 on the season. They've lost their last 5. They're spiralling out of control at the moment with their results. It's understandable. They've got a lot of injuries. They've got plenty of excuses, don't get me wrong. But right now, their football is looking quite poor, and it's pretty much easy pickings for the Bulldogs, who kind of love these sort of occasions. The Bulldogs can score very heavily, and I would be very surprised if they don't score very heavily in this game. Bombers have lost their last 5. GWS, Richmond, Gold Coast, Fremantle and Geelong. So 4 of those have been top 8, top 9 teams. So they have had a pretty difficult run. But that Richmond loss was basically a showing of where they are at the moment. I know Richmond then went on to win again the next week. But, yeah, just it's not the best form look, is it, when you look at Essendon, recent form. They've only scored in the last 5 games 56-37, 74-63, 56. Only got past 60 twice for a 63 and a 74. It's not reading great, in all honesty. They've conceded over 100 points in 4 of those 5 games as well. The only one they didn't was Richmond. So things not going spectacularly well for the Bombers right now. You look at it on paper, the Bulldogs' offense is really, really good. The Bombers' offense has really been struggling. Both teams' defense, Bulldogs' defense is still definitely better than the Bombers so far this year, but it's probably their weak point on both sides of the fence, I think, is their defense. Well, actually, probably Essendon's defense is probably better than their offense, in all honesty, but certainly not the case for the Bulldogs. Last 10 matches between these 2 teams, no surprise here, 8-2 in favour of the Bulldogs. They only met once last year, and the Bombers won that one, but their meeting this year was an absolute demolition job. 18-19, 127 the Doggies got, 5-6, 36 the Bombers. I'd be very surprised if the Bombers got closer than that in this game. it doesn't look like it's going to be a good game on paper. Pretty much across the board, Bulldogs dominate the stat sheet. They're a better clearance team, better contested team, better turnover team. Just more accurate, better efficiency going forward. There's just not a lot on the stat sheet that suggests the Bombers can do too well in this game. As we said, they've got plenty of excuses. They have a lot of players that would be in their best 22, 23 players that aren't playing due to injury. But you can only play with what you've got. And right now, that suggests a big Bulldogs win on Friday night. We have a second game on Friday night. This one will be slightly later. I think 20-minute later kickoff maybe. Up at NG Stadium in Sydney. It's the battle for the bridge, as they call it. Giants, Sydney. This is a huge game for both teams. Both teams have a lot riding on this game. It's 6th on the ladder, v 10th on the ladder. Giants are going to be going in favourites, even though they don't have a great record against Sydney, which we'll get to shortly. Both teams in pretty good form. GWS can win this and keep in touch with the top 4. They lose this, they're battling towards the bottom of the 8. There's still plenty of weeks to go, plenty of things to happen, but that's where they'll be at the end of the round. Whereas Sydney, they lose this, their season is done, run and done. Whereas if they win this one, it still lives on for another week at least. You look at the recent form, Giants have won their last 5, and there's been some big wins in that. They've beaten Brisbane, Gold Coast and Geelong in that 5-week stretch. So 3 teams that are all competing for similar spots on the ladder. The other 2 wins were West Coast and the Bombers. Really quite good form. They've scored over 100 points the last 5 weeks as well, and have not conceded 100 in any of those 5. However, Brisbane got 96, Gold Coast got 99. So 2 teams did go close to the 100. But other than that, it's been all positive signs for the Giants. So sometimes teams can score well against them. But overall, their offense is flying at the moment. They even got 100 last week without Jesse Hogan out there. Things are definitely looking good for the Giants. On the other side, Sydney are playing some pretty good football. You take out the loss to the Bulldogs 4 weeks ago, which was only a 9-point loss up at the SCG. The rest of the form's pretty good. Beat Port Adelaide 5 weeks ago, then 3 weeks ago beat Fremantle, which was a really big win. The only team that's beat Fremantle in the last 8 weeks. So that's a really good win, that one. They beat the Saints only by 5 points, and then last week they beat the Kangaroos by 31 at home. So their form's pretty solid, but Giants are probably going a lot better. There was a point 5-6 weeks ago where the Giants were struggling to stay in touch with the top 8, but they just keep winning, as do some of the other teams in the top 8. So it's all going to come down to these final weeks for those final positions on the ladder, and get a spot in September. But they just need to keep winning, and this isn't going to be an easy one for them. They will start favourites, but you look at the history of these 2 teams. Sydney have actually won the last 5 matchups between these 2 teams, and Sydney are 8-2 across the last 10. Really, really good form. You got to go back to round 7, 2023 for the last time GWS won, and that was a 1-point victory. The time before that was the 2021 elimination final down in Tassie, when once again GWS won by 1 point. So their last 2 wins have only been by a point. Sydney's form against GWS has been really good. Obviously, they met earlier this season. Sydney won it by 14 points. They met in that qualifying final last year that I'm sure a lot of people remember. GWS looked in control most of the day. Sydney came home well, won by 6 points. The other 2 times they met last year, Sydney won reasonably comfortably by about 5 goals. So, yeah, Sydney were probably on paper a lot better team last year than GWS. Well, maybe not a lot better, but during the home and away season, they certainly were. And, I mean, they've won their last 5 against GWS. This is going to be a challenge. It's at NG Stadium. It should be a cracking game. Where's this game going to be run and won? Well, it's going to be interesting across the ground. Offensively, with the ball, GWS are super. That's probably Sydney's strong point, is their defence, though. So GWS's strong point against Sydney's strong point. And then the 2 weak points go against each other. Sydney's offense this year has not been great, and that's going up against GWS's defense, which at times has not been as good as it has previous seasons. Although last few weeks, I think it certainly has been a bit improved. So we'll see if that carries forward to this week. Across the stat sheet, most of the stats actually read quite well for GWS in this head-to-head matchup, but they just don't seem to be able to do it against Sydney for some reason. You take their stats across the season, and it looks really, really positive for them. Does that mean they're going to win or lose? Who knows? I think this is going to be a game where it's going to be who performs on the day. If Isaac Heaney comes out and plays as well as he did last week, Sydney are going to be tough to beat. As we've gone through many times, last year they were really successful throughout the year at getting goals from their midfield, and that's what's kind of coming back. Now that Errol Goulden's back, between him, Warner, Isaac Heaney, it just adds 3 threats through that midfield to score goals. And yes, Heaney goes forward at times, as did Errol Goulden last week. But it just adds those extra dynamics to kick goals. Chuck in the fact that Brodie Grundy's almost in career best form over the last 10 to 12, maybe 15 weeks. It's shaping up that Sydney maybe left their run too late, but they're playing some really good football. So don't expect that they won't come out and play some really good football on Friday night and take this game right to the wire. It could go either way. I'm leaning towards GWS, but at the same time, I'm not convinced either way for either team, really. Moving on to the next game, it's Saturday afternoon. It's the Q Clash. The early start is almost game of the round. Gold Coast v Brisbane, 8th on the ladder v 2nd on the ladder. Gold Coast have played one less game, as you will be well and truly aware of. They play the extra game late in the season. Brisbane going to be favourites by the looks of things in this one. It is at People First Stadium, so home game for Gold Coast. Does the result from last week just weigh on people's minds a little bit? Gold Coast obviously have had a very interesting 2-week period. 2 weeks ago, they beat Collingwood after keeping them goalless in the first half. Following week, they were kept goalless by Adelaide in the first half and ended up losing by 51 points. So make of that what you will. They're 11-6 on the season, so they've had a good season. Obviously, before last week's loss, they'd put together 3 wins just to get their season rolling again after a little scrappy patch through the middle. They don't want to lose 2 in a row, and this is a real danger game for them. Brisbane are a good team that are in good form, so this is, if they lose this one and the Doggies obviously win, then all of a sudden that just opens up that little bit there again, that 9th and 8th swapping spots. And Bulldogs obviously don't have the toughest run home, I don't think, but I don't think Gold Coast do either. They've certainly got some winnable games, but they probably still need another 3 at least throughout the rest of the season. So they need to keep playing good football, no doubt about it. On the other side of the fence, Brisbane, they're 13.5 wins, pretty much qualified for finals. One more win would guarantee finals for them. You look at their last stretch, their last loss was 5 weeks ago against GWS, which was at the Gabba. GWS just played some really good football that day. Since then, though, Brisbane have kind of switched back on. They beat Geelong down at the Cattery. They beat Port Adelaide. They beat Carlton in Melbourne, and then they've gone and beaten the Bulldogs last week up at the Gabba. So their form's pretty good, 4 wins in a row. You got to think that based on that, they're certainly going to be tough to beat. It's at People First Stadium, I know, but it's similar conditions to what they used to. The matchup history is all Brisbane. Over the last 10 matchups, it's 9-1 in Brisbane's favour. All time, it's 21-7. So Brisbane certainly have a really, really good record against Gold Coast. And I would expect that's going to be the same. The only time since the COVID years that Gold Coast have beaten Brisbane was 2023, round 20. Since then, there was 2 matchups last year. Brisbane won them both pretty comfortably, in all honesty, and one of those was an incredible win with men down galore. And then they met earlier this year, which was at the Gabba, and the Lions won it by 17 points. Um, it's going to be an important game. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be interesting to see how it matches up. Both teams pretty good across the board. I think Brisbane on paper are the better team, um, both offensively and defensively. But then it's just Gold Coast, when they're playing their best football, look really, really good. I would be very surprised to see them not put in a good performance. They'll be raring to go after what happened to them last week. 2 weeks ago was kind of like, felt like their biggest game of their history against Collingwood. So maybe they were just on a bit of a down emotion after that, like a bit of a went from the high to the low. So I think we'll see them bounce back with a bit more this week. They need to try and stop Brisbane from just having uncontested football. That's what Brisbane do best. When they control the football and control the pace of the game, they really look good. Gold Coast look their best when they take the game on. When they're running, when they're carrying, and when they're hunting impacts. That's when they're going to be their best. So it will be interesting to see how that matchup kind of plays out in this one, whether Brisbane can control the ball and the pace of the game. If they can manage to do that, I can't see a world where Brisbane will lose this. But at the same time, Gold Coast will be trying to play their pace. And if they can keep it going and bouncing end to end, they will be very, very hard to beat in this one. Moving on to the next game, it's Fremantle West Coast. Another crosstown rivalry, which this weekend is full of. Over at Optus Stadium, 7th on the ladder v 18th on the ladder. Fremantle in some of the best form of their history, just about. They're playing some sensational football at the moment, coming off the massive away win over the top of the ladder, Collingwood Magpies. West Coast, they're in free fall. They might be playing the worst football in their club history right now. They're 18th on the ladder, and this does not look like a good game on paper. Fremantle obviously are going to be starting heavy favourites. Fremantle 12-6 on the season. I think they've won 8 of their last 9 now. I think that's right. They're in sensational form. Their season was just teetering in that bottom 8 there at one point. Since then, though, they've turned it completely around. They've gone from a negative start to their season to all of a sudden 7th on the ladder, 12-6. They keep winning. Top 4's not out of the realms of possibility. They do have to keep winning, though, and this is the perfect opportunity to do that. This win won't guarantee them finals, not even close. 2 wins, though, might get them there. Their only loss recent weeks was Sydney 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago now, and in the last 5 weeks, well, the last 2 weeks, they've beaten 2 top 8 contenders, Hawthorn and Collingwood, so their season's going great. Other side of the fence, West Coast, I think they're done. I don't know if they will get another win. They probably won't now that we've seen them lose to Richmond last week. They're 1-17 for the season. They've shown glimpses here and there that they're playing some okay football. If they were going to get up and about for a game, this would be the one. But I just can't see it. Losing 49 points to Richmond last week, it's really hard to see them winning. It's funny, though, their best form over the last probably 6 to 8 weeks has been away games, whereas this is technically at home, even though it's an away game. It's Optus Stadium, so I can't see their Optus Stadium form has not been great. Their away form has certainly been better, so make of that what you will, but it just is, it's a tough read, I think, for the Eagles. Recent form, 7-3 in favour of Fremantle over the last 10. The only win was round 6 last year when West Coast got the upset over Fremantle, which was a really strange one and probably costly for Fremantle's season last year, in all honesty. But since, other than that, you go back to 2021 for West Coast's previous win against them, it's just Fremantle are a team that's competing right now. West Coast are not. So, I mean, they're the numbers that you expect. Fremantle's defense across the year has been super. They're getting better and better each week, I think. Their offense still has a bit of work to do. It was great last week. Obviously, Paddy Voss did a splendid job kicking 6 goals. West Coast, just bad all round the ground. Back line, forward line, midfield, it's all kind of struggling. Once again, another team that's got a lot of injuries and retirements, and you look at their best players on their list. McGovern's obviously retired. Elliot Yeo hasn't played and is not going to play a game this season. So it's just like things like that just are really not helping their season. You chuck in Dom Sheed hasn't played. It's just not been a great season for the Eagles across the board. But that is how it is. Sometimes that happens. I don't know if I can even find a way for the Eagles to win this. Fremantle should just win it out of the contest. They're not as good a clearance team as they were previous years, but that's been probably a positive for them because they're playing better football. But they'll win clearances here against West Coast, almost certainly. Hayden Young came back into the team last week as sub. He played a really good quarter, so I expect him to come back in for a full match this week, which really, I think, helps this team a lot because he is that finishing touch for them. They have Brayshaw and Sarong that rack up the touches, and Young is their finishing midfielder. So I think that will benefit them as well. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out across the remainder of the year, but I can't see a world where West Coast can compete in this game. That's Saturday afternoon local time for Western Australia. I think it's like a 4:30 start in Eastern States. We move on to the next game, which is the first of two Saturday night games. This is Marvel Stadium. It's North Melbourne v Geelong, 17th on the ladder v 4th on the ladder. Another game that doesn't look like it's going to be too great on paper. It's hard to see a world where North Melbourne genuinely compete in this game. Going back 5 weeks ago, North Melbourne looked like they were in some okay form. They beat Carlton to get their 4th win of the season, the 4.5 wins from their 19, 18 matches, however many they've played. 18 matches. I don't know what I'm on about. But since then, it's kind of the wheels have fallen off. They got absolutely smashed by Hawthorn. They got smacked quite comfortably by Bulldogs. They got beaten by Melbourne quite convincingly, and last week they lost to Sydney. They competed for a little bit of that game, but overall they just weren't competing good enough, in my opinion. And it's hard to see them bouncing back here because it's a tough matchup, even at Marvel. Geelong not the best at Marvel Stadium, but I don't imagine they'll be that bad. They've had a weird little run. They're 4th on the ladder, 12 wins, 6 losses. They've gone win-loss-win. Their 3 wins against bottom teams in Essendon, Richmond, and St Kilda. Their 2 losses against top teams, Brisbane and GWS. That Brisbane one, granted, they maybe could have won if they had a kick straighter. They kicked 6 goals for 15 that day. But it's been a really, really interesting cycle, I guess, for them. They're beating the teams they should be beating. Losing to the top teams, though, which is the one concern for them at the moment. However, I don't think they play another competitive team this season, like in terms of competitive playing finals football. So they have a genuine chance to win every game from here on out and finish certainly top 4, maybe top 2, depending on other results. They're going to get their chance to play finals and probably have that second chance. But they need to find a way to start competing a little bit better against those top teams than they have been over recent weeks. That's about the long and the short of it. The head-to-head of this matchup, it's been forever since North Melbourne have beaten Geelong. Geelong have won the last 10 at least, going back to 2019. You look at it, and it's a tough read for North Melbourne. In those last 9 matches, they haven't scored above 66. Only scored 10 goals twice. They've been below 50 4 times in that run. Geelong score quite heavily against them. Last 5 times they've scored over 100 points, and 6 out of the 10 times they've scored over 100. So on paper, this looks like an absolute demolition job. If this Geelong offense gets rolling like they are known to do, against bottom teams, watch out, because they will score heavily against this North Melbourne defence that's just not quite at that AFL level, in my opinion. And that's their biggest issue. Their offense isn't spectacular, but it can hold its own against teams. But their defense just cannot stop teams from scoring. When they need to shut teams down, they just cannot do it. And that's just the long and the short of it. And I think that's how this game's going to play out. Geelong probably win the contest. Maybe North Melbourne do all right in the clearance game. But I just don't see a world where they get enough inside 50s and convert enough of them to stay up with this Geelong team that dominate and thrive off that turnover game, that pressure game, and that transition game. They're just going to, once they get the ball, they'll get it into their forward 50, and I don't see North getting it out too well. It's going to be relying on North getting it out of the centre and kicking goals, which is their most prosperous avenue to goal in comparison to other teams, but it's not going to sustain you in a match across 4 quarters. You might get 3, 4, 5 goals from the centre bounce, but if you can't get the ball out of the opposition 50, which North Melbourne historically struggle against and Geelong are pretty good at guarding against, it's going to be a really tough day, I think, for North Melbourne across the board. There's another Saturday night game, and this is probably the better of the two, in all honesty. It's Adelaide, Port Adelaide, Adelaide Oval, Saturday night football. Port Adelaide's season technically is run and won. Adelaide, though, they have everything to play for right now. They're sitting third on the ladder. 13 wins, 5 losses. They've won their last 4. All of a sudden, there's the minor premiership is in their sights. Can they get there? There's every chance right now with the way other games are going. Collingwood falling over a little bit. Adelaide flying. They play each other in 3 or 4 weeks. So that's going to be a massive game. But they've got everything to play for in this game. Port Adelaide, their season's done. However, they would love to beat Adelaide and really hurt their season. There's no doubt about it. I don't know if they're good enough to do it, but if there's one game they'll get up and about for, it's the showdown. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Third on the ladder, as we said, for the Crows, 13-5, 4 wins in a row. Their last loss was down in Tassie to Adelaide to Hawthorn, by 3 points. Since then, they've beaten Richmond, Melbourne, the Bulldogs, and Gold Coast. So the last 2 weeks have been really big wins, away to the Bulldogs and then home to the Gold Coast Suns. Port Adelaide, they've been win-loss since the bye, basically. The last 5 have been lost to Sydney, beat Carlton, lost to Brisbane, beat West Coast, lost to Hawthorn. So going by that, they win this week. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but it's a funny little trend that they've got going on. But yeah, this is going to be a tough one, depending on their personnel available for it and whatnot. But the stat sheet suggests Adelaide are going to be too good. It's the showdown, though. It's usually pretty tight. You look across the last 10 meetings, it's 5-5, even though Port Adelaide across that time have probably been the much better team overall. It's just Adelaide are looking a lot better now. Their offense is super. Their defense is very, very good. Overall, they're great. Port Adelaide, their offense is poor. Their defense is pretty solid. And overall, they're okay. Pretty much across the board, stat sheet wise, it's dominated by Adelaide, in all honesty. Port Adelaide play a little bit more of a high handball game, try and run and carry. Will that work to get through Adelaide? Probably not. It might help Port Adelaide score, but it also will open them up on the other end. Adelaide love to score heavily. They love to score heavily from turnover. And if you give them opportunities, they will make you pay. Their forward line is as good as anyone's in the competition. Their midfield is absolutely going great. And their defense is solid as well. So, there's not many weaknesses right now in this Adelaide team. And you got to think, they're every chance to keep winning games and finish first or second on the ladder this season. So, it's going to be a tough night for Port Adelaide. I think Adelaide should definitely win it, but maybe Port Adelaide can get up for the showdown. I guess we'll see come Saturday night. We've only got 2 more games to take a look at. Alrighty, for Sunday, we kick off with 2 games. For some reason, they're overlapping. Who knows why? AFL sometimes makes some interesting decisions. But this one's Richmond, Collingwood, MCG, Sunday afternoon. Ignore the graphic. Richmond are not 18th on the ladder. It's 16th on the ladder, v first on the ladder. Richmond, who would have thought that they'd be going into this game on a 2-game winning streak and Collingwood would be on a 2-game losing streak? What a weird little run of the season we've had. Obviously, Richmond's season, they've won 5 games now, 13 losses. They've won their last 2. Before that, they'd lost 3 in a row. Granted, it's only been Essendon and West Coast that they've beat the last 2 weeks. But good winning form's good form. Meanwhile, Collingwood, they're the reverse. They were 14-2. Things were going great when they beat Carlton. They then lost to Gold Coast with a poor performance 2 weeks ago. And then after being 4 goals up, basically, in the last quarter against Fremantle, they fell over and Fremantle came from behind with a really, really good win to win by a point last Sunday. So it's just a little interesting note on this game. Collingwood still sitting top of the ladder, but all of a sudden that's looking dangerous with the run home that they've got. You'd imagine they will go into this one and beat Richmond, you'd say. Not guaranteed based on recent form, but you'd have to think that they're going to be a chance. They're going to certainly be heavy favourites in this game. The history of this matchup is 5 wins for Collingwood, 4 wins for Richmond, and 1 draw back in 2020. Make of that what you will. Recent actual form since 2020, they don't play each other that much. It's typically just 1 matchup a year. The last time that they played each other twice in a year was 2019. And in that period, they were playing each other twice a year, pretty much every year. 2018, they did twice, plus a prelim final. 2019, they played each other twice. Since then, it's been once a year. Collingwood won last year by a comfortable enough margin, 27 points or 26 points or whatever it was. The year before, 2023, they won by 14 points. Before that, Richmond won in 2022 when Collingwood did end up making finals that year and Richmond didn't. So an interesting one nonetheless. What do we make of this matchup? Collingwood should, on paper, be way too good. You'd think their offense is overall pretty good without having... I mean, Jamie Elliott's been really consistent down there, but they don't have stars. They just have people that keep getting the job done and a game plan that kind of works most of the time. Perhaps the last couple of weeks they've been found out a little bit. Teams taking the risk to come through the middle and push the ball fast has really found Collingwood undone a few times. I don't know if Richmond are capable of that, but I guess we'll find out on Sunday. Defensively, Collingwood also very strong. Richmond, their defense has been a lot better than their offense. Probably not that surprising. They do have some senior players in that backline that are playing some really good, consistent football. Their midfield's been pretty solid over recent weeks. Hopper and Taranto over the last month have been outstanding. So it's hard to see a world where Richmond do compete genuinely against Collingwood in this game. It is at the MCG, but you just never know. They're on a 2-game winning streak. Collingwood 2-game losing streak, as we've said many times already in the last 5 minutes. But I just think that overall Collingwood should be too strong. You'd have to think on paper. They'll be up and about. They need to start winning games. They can't keep losing. If they want to finish top 2, they need to probably win. Probably at least 3 out of their last 5. Is there 5 games left? However many there is left. Yeah, 5. They need to win 3 of those at least if they want to finish top 2. And they've got some tough games in there. So this one is one of the ones that they need to definitely win. Richmond, they've done better than anybody could have expected them to this season already. 5 wins is an outstanding result, I think, from them. Their young players are getting some good experience. They'll be well positioned heading forward. So that is great news for the Tigers going forward. And any win from here is absolutely a massive bonus for Richmond. So that's basically where they're at. We've got one more game to look at for this weekend, and it's St Kilda. It's Melbourne. It's at Marvel Stadium. It's almost at the same time. Starts an hour later than the Collingwood Richmond game. It's not one that has much impact on, I guess, the season in terms of finals. It's 15th versus 13th. It will have an impact on draft positions, and where both of these teams finish for the season. They don't necessarily have their own picks, but it will impact draft positions for the competition. So it will be interesting. Probably the winner of this match will end up above the other one for the rest of the season, hypothetically. Not necessarily, definitely, but certainly possibly. Melbourne are going to be heading in favourites. Both teams in some quite poor form, in all honesty. St Kilda are 5-13 for the season, which is just quite poor. From where they started the season, and I guess they didn't have high expectations, but for the quality of players that they do have, 5 wins, to be on the same amount of wins as Richmond right now, is probably very disappointing for the Saints. They've lost their last 5. They've lost to Collingwood, Fremantle, Hawthorn, Sydney, and Geelong. 4 of those are finals-bound teams. One of them is a team that's just outside the 8. So it has been a tough little period for them, but 5 wins, 13 losses is not a great record. On the other side of the fence, Melbourne are 6 wins, 12 losses, so they're only 1 extra win. They had a really slow start to the year. They got themselves going. They then fell away again. And were really struggling. They have met already this year. And since that point, St Kilda beat them. And I don't think St Kilda have won since. And Melbourne hadn't won it again since then either, until 2 weeks ago when they played Nth Melbourne and got the win. They've also lost to Carlton, Adelaide, Gold Coast, and Port Adelaide in that last 5 weeks. So St Kilda have been playing the better opposition, you'd have to think, over the last 5 weeks, but both teams really struggling to find the wins at the moment. History of this matchup, Melbourne actually have a good record against them, 6-4 across the last 10. But as we said, they did meet earlier this year. That was in Alice Springs, and St Kilda got the good win by 28 points, but Melbourne did kick really poorly that day. 7 goals, 21. It was a really poor effort. Where's this game going to be won and lost? Probably up St Kilda's end, in all honesty. If St Kilda's offense can beat this Melbourne defense. Melbourne's defense is their strongest part of their game. Their offense has actually been okay over the last 5 weeks, but defensively they're quite strong still. And that's maybe St Kilda's strongest part of their game is their offense. So how that matches up, we'll see. Their defense, St Kilda, this is just not there, even though they have some stars. Callum Wilkie, obviously. But he just doesn't have enough support, and that's probably their most vulnerable part of their game. Is you can get them, So will that be how this game eventuates? I don't know. You look at recent weeks, most teams are scoring pretty well against St Kilda. 113 from Geelong last week. The week before was 92 from Sydney, 94 from Hawthorn, 81 from Freo, 108 from Collingwood. So teams are getting good scores against St Kilda at the moment. Their defense just isn't holding up well enough. So that's not just on the back line. It's obviously all non-ball use, like without the ball. Also, turnovers hurts you. I just think Melbourne should be winning this matchup, but I said that about the last time they played at Alice Springs, and Melbourne played absolutely terribly. So I'm not convinced that Melbourne will win this, but I think they will. Both heavily contested football teams. Wangani Malira is probably the key for St Kilda, in all honesty. He's been in some of the best form in the competition right now. He's showing that he is going to be an absolute star of the game for years to come. He's already at that point, in all honesty. This year he's been outstanding, but the last 4 or 5 weeks have been great from him. If he can go big, then maybe they can win. But on the other side of the fence, Pickett he can also go crazy numbers as well. He can put up 25 touches and 5 goals quite easily. So it's going to be a fascinating game. I don't think it's going to be game of the round by any stretch of the imagination, but it certainly might be one worth watching. And we'll find out a bit about both of these teams late in the season. Both teams probably trying to find out about their players and who they want to keep and who they don't. So it's important nonetheless. So that's all 9 games. Before we jump into my tips for the round, you've probably picked out, if you've listened to this whole episode, most of who I'm going to be tipping in this week. But don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all of those things. Whatever platform you're listening to this on, this goes out on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts twice a week. Make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button. Hit that noti bell if you're on YouTube so you don't miss any uploads. Go check out all the social medias, all Aussie Rules everywhere. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Let's jump into my tips before we wrap her up. Round 20 tips. We're going Hawthorn in the opening game against Carlton. They should be too strong. They were too strong earlier this year. I don't think they'll be super convincing. 31 points, I've got them. They could win by 60. They could win by 80. But they should be too strong. I'm going by 31. Bulldogs should be way too good for the Bombers. I've got them by 65. That could be 165 in all honesty. That would be ridiculous, but who would know? GWS v Sydney. I've gone the Giants to break their bad run of form against Sydney. I've only got them by 5. I think it's going to be an absolute nail-biter. I think Sydney, playing for their life, will be out there trying their absolute bestest. Bestest? Yeah, I did say that word. Brisbane against Gold Coast. I've got Brisbane winning. Their form against Gold Coast is just too good. Obviously, last week, Gold Coast weren't fantastic. Hence why their odds are probably dropped in this game, maybe. And I don't know, Brisbane win this, they all of a sudden really keep their top 2 chances alive with this one, basically. They've got some tough games coming up. I think they play Collingwood at the MCG. Maybe next week. So that will be a big one for them as well. Then we got Fremantle should be way too good for West Coast. I think West Coast will play some okay football in this, but Fremantle should be too strong. 41 might be underselling it. Geelong should be way too good for North Melbourne. I've got them by 17. It's at Marvel. Sometimes Geelong don't perform their best at Marvel. But we'll see how that plays out. Adelaide should be too good for Port Adelaide. I've got them by 20. I think Port Adelaide will put up a fight for 3/4 of this, and then the class of Adelaide will prevail in the end. Collingwood should be too strong for Richmond. I've got them by 35. I don't see them smashing them by more than probably 6 goals, but you just never know. Melbourne, I've got by 8 points against St Kilda. It's going to be a tough game, that one. That's probably the biggest seesawing game of them all. But we'll see how that plays out. I'm going Melbourne for now. Season 112 out of 161, so it's not fantastic. The last few weeks have been pretty solid, though. And that's everything we got for you. Don't forget to come back on Monday. We will have a review of all 9 matches, including our Brownlow update, our MVP update, and everything else you need to know about the world of football. Don't forget to hit the socials. TikTok, we do game reviews after every single match. Twitter, game reviews go up on there. Instagram is the same. They have game reviews. They also have plenty of other content. So go check all of that out. I'm Jay. This is the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope to see you on the next one.